Hello and welcome to Radical Engagements here at Varn Blog. And we're talking about Peter Turchin's 2022 blog post, The Collapse of Simple Societies, where Turchin engages with Joseph Tainter. Tainter and Turchin are actually in dialogue with each other quite a bit, something that I wasn't aware of when I first started discussing Turchin, surely way back in 2021, when I discussed him on Mortal Science with Esri, back when I did that show. All right, let's get into it. Why do large-scale complex societies within which over 99% of humanity now lives recurrently experience periods of social and political breakdown? The question is morbidly fascinating, especially since we've now entered the turbulent 20s. Books of collapse are now a contest industry, of which Turchin himself contributes, and there's a whole new science called collapsology. The classics, such as Joseph Tainter's The Collapse of Complex Societies, enjoy enduring popularity, and it's a good book. I tell people to read it all the time. Social collapse has been surging on Google Group's Ngram viewer. You see it being very flatline between 1900 and 1960. It starts to rise during the crisis in the 1970s, picks up in the 2000s, and has absolutely skyrocketed since the 2010s on the Ngram viewer. Tainter argued that as societies become more complex, they become more fragile and susceptible to collapse. More recently, this theory has received a name, complexity overhang. A negative view of social complexity as a source of instability fits well within another current in political thought, anarchism, which sees the state as a source of all evil, oppression, violence, and legitimized theft. In my view, political anarchism is complete bunk, as I've argued in these blog posts, and we're going to talk about one of them later on. But returning to the question of the relationship between complexity and stability, I confess that until recently, I also thought that simple societies, small-scale societies of farmers without deep social inequities and no political organizations beyond the local settlement village, were quite resilient, not susceptible to collapse. Now, also, I don't think Joseph Tainter is an anarchist, but we'll come back to that. In such societies, there is no state or nobles to rebel against, and in any case, what's there to collapse? Now, I agree with where Turchin is going on this, but I do think his dismissal of Tainter as basically implying anarchism, and that's why it's popular, is a little bizarre. Considering what Tainter sees as successful navigations of collapse, or like the Byzantine Empire and the I think 9th century, not a stateless society. Life in simple society, prosperous, peaceful, and free of oppression. But perhaps collapse is not a useful way of thinking about societal dynamics. It is a problematic concept because it can mean so many things. This was my frustration with a lot of responses to Tainter, as they didn't argue that he was wrong. They argued about the semantics of collapse. And I'm serious, and I hope Turchin doesn't do that because it's just not particularly helpful. This is why I'm not a collapsologist. I prefer to work with well-defined concepts, which ideally are amenable to quantification. And this quantification is a problem. He has data set problems because he uses national numbers, and it really shows up in his discussion of World War II in his book, Age of Discord, by the way, which I talked about many years ago. But back here. So let's propose this question from the point of view of quantitative history. The most basic property of society is its size, how many people interact together and hopefully cooperate. Population numbers, or density, numbers divided by area, is thus a fundamental variable for cliodynamics. And that seems fair. Previous work by my colleagues and me on state-level societies show that waves of social political instability are also associated with significant population declines or population busts. The current tabulation of past crises and crisis DB, note work in process, indicates that roughly half the cases of social political crisis in complex societies results in substantial population decline, which, by the way, we happen to be seeing right now. Right now, we're living through it. Now, a lot of people confuse this. They think that the population decline is a cause of the collapse, but it's not. It's not, friends. It's a feedback loop with it, but it is not the cause. What about pre-state non-centralized societies? And the classic study by Ammerman and Scafley Sforza on the rate of the spread of early farming in Europe, published in 1971. I studied it in graduate school because it was one of the first applications of the diffusion equation to population spread. Population dynamics in space and time was my disciplinary specialty before I switched to quantitative history. These distinguished authors started with the observation that farming increases the carrying capacity. How many people can be supported per unit of land? A square kilometer. A population of farmers, after spreading into a new area, will grow it until it reaches its carrying capacity and then stabilize at that level, with some fluctuations due to variable climate and other random factors. The dynamic process was captured by Ackerman and Scavelli-Sforza with a logical equation. But as archaeologists developed better methods for estimating past populations and accumulated lots more data, it turned out the assumption was wrong. This is why you can't just base things on numbers. In several regions in which first European farmers spread, this is known as the LBK culture, we see, as expected, an initial population boom resulting from a more productive economy, even if other things dropped off, such as bone density, which is not good, but whatever, we can talk about that another day. But instead of leveling off, the boom was abruptly followed by a bust, and we have a chart here in centuries BC following population bust as predicted by archaeologists. Population distance to the early LBK in the lower Rhine Basin, figure 6 in Zimmerman, A.J. Helpert, and K.P. Wendt, 2009, estimates the population density for selected periods between Neolithic and AD 1800, Human Biology, volume 81, issue 81, pages 355 to 358 to 357 to 380. Man, my dysnumeria is acting up. The same pattern is not observed only in Europe, but also in other world regions. Last week, Daniel Condor and I organized a workshop at the Complexity Science Hub in Vienna, in which we delved into the issue. While we know population busts in early farming societies were frequently occurrence, we do not know whether such cycles were universal or whether there were periods and places where population levels stabilized for long periods of time. For a list of participants in the questions we discussed, see the Complexity Science Hub press release. We also discussed the probable causes of boom bust in prehistory, but that is a topic for another post. So let's go into this post. So what we see here is there are complex social dynamics that seem to be even causing simple societies to go through boom bust patterns, not boom stabilization patterns as priorly predicted. And that's kind of a big damn deal. All right, so this is from the press release. Boom after bust, but why? Population has not only grown. Workshop. Since humans discovered agriculture, population has grown rapidly. However, repeated declines also occurred, even amongst the first farming communities. International experts, even among the first farming communities, international experts explored a wide range of evidence for this, along with several possible explanations in a CHS workshop. It is well known for the past 10,000 years, since people have started to settle and doing agriculture, human populations have grown tremendously. Yet, more and more evidence is accumulating that growth was not monotonic, because almost no growth is monotonic. It's interspersed by periods of declines, often associated with severe crises. Right. Quote, one dramatic example is a true population collapse affected the Cutane Tripoli culture in the 4th millennium BCE. At its peak, there were large proto-cities with 10,000 or more inhabitants, but after complete depopulation of the area, archaeologists could not find any evidence of habitation for 600 years following the collapse. CSH researcher Peter Turchin explains. It also happened in the Neolithic. Well-known cases over the course of written history have been studied extensively. Less attention has been paid so far to declines during the Neolithic, a period without large-scale political organization, writing, or use of metals. Yet population busts follow booms that seem to be an important feature of this period as well. So far, there's no consensus on the cause or causes of such declines, though we do know that Neolithic people face many challenges. Manifold possible drivers. In a workshop hosted by complexity researchers Peter Turchin and Daniel Condor, experts with a wide range of knowledge on the Neolithic population history joined us at the CHS Vienna to accumulate their knowledge about estimated population growth or decline. Quote, we now know that population declines are a common phenomenon, although the difference in how this happens and the factors that might have been important, Condor says. Differences in how this happens and factors that might have been important. Possible drivers of population trajectories include a variety of challenges faced by early farmers, like changes in climate, overexploitation of resources, conflicts, warfare, and diseases, aka the classic Malthusian bundle, which actually did apply to human societies before the invention of a lot of modern technologies. Regions of special interest. We discussed knowledge in the population history of several world regions, concentrating on the evidence of alternating periods of population growth and decline, so-called booms and busts, Condor explains. The Central European Neolithic is one of the cases with a lot of research. Farmers arriving at Anatolia across the Balkans settled the region in present-day Hungary to the Netherlands in the 6th millennium BCE. They were quickly growing in numbers, which indicated they apparently managed to be well adapted to local conditions. Significant population decline happened 300 to 500 years after the initial settlement, with some regions abandoned almost completely. Besides Europe, other important regions of Neolithic settlement, such as China, were also the focus of research. Fascination of collapse. Everybody is fascinated with the collapse of large-scale complex societies. Many thinkers have proposed that collapse, as manifested by a drastic decline in the society size, their so-called population bust, is a price we pay for social complexity. But our knowledge of population dynamics of simple, small-scale societies and Neolithic farmers become more detailed thanks to the intense archaeological research. We learn that these societies were perhaps even more susceptible to population busts than later states or empires. But are they under the same dynamic? That's an interesting question. The causes of such busts remain mysterious. We just know that they happened. And then there are many hypotheses, but no scientific consensus so far, Turchin says. Now, this is important for two reasons. One, it indicates that part of the boom bust cycle is environmental and relational, not just complexity. Two, complexity may be a major contributor, but living in an uncomplex society is not itself a great thing. Three, I don't think Tainter would even Tainter would even disagree with that. But we'll come back. Tainter's actually written reviews of Turchin's book, so we'll have a lot of stuff to pull from if we want to. We'll be coming back to Turchin soon enough. Protect your peace, like and subscribe, hit the bell, and there's more behind the paywall.